Hello, everyone. This is Christina, the Black Swan Sybil, greeting you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Welcome to our cosmic conversation, where we're gathering together for the purpose of crystallizing unity consciousness, which is what we are now embodying on this planet. So I'm excited to invite my guest today. Artemiss is an Iranian-born, US-raised, Australian-based woman who is mother to her two biggest delights and teachers. As a clarity coach, Artemiss works at the intersection of spirituality, personal development, and common sense strategy for business alignment and whole of life topics. Her passion is supporting her clients to connect to their intuition and inner wisdom. A recovering people pleaser and power giver awayer, she delights in her ever expanding spiral journey of self awareness and now stands in her power as an anti dogma advocate and inner guru catalyst. Welcome, Artemiss. What an
Thank you,
intro.
Really good to be here, sweetheart.
Yeah, wow. What just reading that intro, it's like poof, expansion happening in my mind as I'm reading out loud.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so glad that we get to finally talk. We've
Yeah.
interacted many times on social media, but it's nice to actually, connect with your energy in real time, looking at your facial expressions and just really, making that solidifying that personal connection that we have here.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited to be actually talking to you in person. Well, in person,
Right.
digital person.
Right. Well, this is the new normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that phrase. This is a fabulous way to make technology serve you.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Thank you for filling in that sentence. So, I ask everybody, although, it's funny because I'm switching my format. I have a whole new list of questions.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna do that to you.
I trust you. Throw out whatever you want.
I'm probably gonna throw some in there because, I've been inspired by having this project. I've been inspired in myself about, connecting with people and seeing the inspiration that they get from having this interaction. So I feel like my questions are kind of morphing into inspiring. What's your inspiration? What's the title of your autobiography? What inspires you? You know um, what is your ultimate outcome without worrying about the outcome? So yeah, so those
Cool.
you might get something thrown at you in there, but for the sake of continuity, shall we ask you the same question that we ask everyone, to tell us about your awakening story and where you were and where you are now?
Sure.
So what set of beliefs were you raised with? Yeah.
So I'm Iranian. So as a country, we're like Islamic, but my parents were not practicing. And in fact, we happened to leave Iran thinking we were going to be in the States for just a couple of months when the revolution broke out. So we never went back. My dad went back for a little while. Sorry?
You still haven't been back?
We have been back as adults, but when I left, I was 7.
Okay.
And we were meant to be in the US just for a couple of months while my dad was getting his master's degree. And then all hell broke loose. My dad did have to go back for a couple of years, but my mom and my sister and I, we managed to get immigration status, and we stayed there. So my background was, even though it's Iranian, growing up in America at the time when it was really not good to be Iranian, because that's when the hostage crisis stuff was happening. There was a real, for me, that's where I think my lack of feeling like I belonged anywhere. I was not a white-skinned blonde American. I was Iranian, but I didn't admit to being Iranian because it was just shocking for an 8-year-old to be called a terrorist. Mm-hmm. And religious-wise, we were not a religious family. We lived in a Christian American country, and we celebrated Christmas with friends, but we were not of any particular religious or faith or something. And then when we moved to Australia, same thing. It's a religion, it's a Christian influenced country. and we celebrate Christmas. And, you know, I've married an Australian, my sister's married a Maltese Australian. So there's that influence of, you know, a Christian overtone on things, but he's more spiritual than religious anyway. So, so that's kind of, I think religious wise, we kind of didn't have much of a framework. Culturally, you know, my parents were both very, you know, they grew up in Iran. So a lot of what they brought was the Iranian culture. What I find interesting was when I did go back for the first time when I was 25 was the only time I went back, and I was there for 6 weeks. My cousins and everybody who was my age was more similar to me than the kind of idea I had of them based on what my parents, because my parents had kind of gotten stuck at the age they left. Whereas everybody else my age, my cousins who were growing up, they were growing up into that, you know, current date. So it was really interesting to go back and go, oh, they're actually not that different to me. They're just in a very different thing. So culturally, again, I was also displaced. So
you know, it's interesting because
one of the things,
yeah, go ahead.
one of the interesting things for me is this sense of displacement has been a real theme in my life. And when I moved to Australia, I moved here when I was 15. Really angry. You don't move a 15-year-old across the world. It's really not a good idea. So that sense of not belonging anywhere was like particularly stronger. And that has stayed as a theme. And then about maybe 5 years ago, so I'm almost 50 now. So I've been here, you know, for 35 years, and I still, up to 5 years ago, didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I don't connect to my Iranian heritage. I'm not an American. I have this funny mixed accent. I'm not Australian. You know, I'm like, where do I belong? And a friend of mine who does a lot of shamanic work, we held a little ceremony because we wanted to do some healing around a property that it's very key to the song lines of the Aboriginal people from the area that we were in. And we were just feeling, as 4 non-Indigenous people, we were just feeling into how we can respectfully bring some healing and bring some forgiveness to the space. And in that, we were in our little ritual, I had this vision of this Aboriginal man present himself, and he was wearing the traditional red cloth. And he just looked at me with these incredibly wise, somber eyes. And he said, none of us belong here, and we all belong here. Let's drop that story. And I just cried for like 24 hours because I'm like, oh my God, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Because I'm like, okay, I have finally landed somewhere where I can put my spiritual roots, where I can put my belief into something that is there. So that was kind of like that arc to where this is now. So I consider myself Australian more than anything. Yeah. You know, my children are born here. They have weird Australian accents. Yeah. They think I have an accent. I think they have an accent.
Right. Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah.
Well, how about now? What do you believe about the nature of reality now that you've...
So, nature of reality, hasn't it shifted specifically these last, what are we up to? October, 10, 11, you know, 9, 10 months. Mm-hmm. I'd say my sense of reality in the last 9 months has shifted more dramatically than the last 20 years. And personally, I've been interested in paganism and witchcraft and shamanism and spirituality and all sorts of stuff since I was about 18. You know, I've done lots of courses, read lots of books, done lots of therapy in different areas and all of this. And I'd say seeing how things are playing out in the last couple of months has, I don't know, cemented, brought together so many threads in a way that I go, oh, well, there's all those ideas that were kind of like floating around like loose bubbles or theories. and they're now actually coming in together in, if you want to call it, in like crunchy reality. They're actually like manifesting in something that I'm looking at it going, yeah, well, that's really interesting. So reality is very malleable right now, which is a beautiful thing.
It's amazing. It is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's just coming into my experience over and over and over again. It's like, you know, it's strange because we have our whiteboard, we have our projects, and we've got our trajectory, and we've got what we think we know what we're doing, right? We're doing this, and this is how we're doing it, and we're hoping for this kind of outcome. And suddenly in the last 2 weeks, just since October began, I'm like reevaluating everything, not in a way of, oh, we're doing this wrong, we shouldn't be doing that, but in a way of, oh, I see how this works. Literally every thought that you have and every feeling that you have, if you want to create that reality, then keep going. But if you recognize, hey, this isn't really what I want, then you change it right there. You just shift your attitude, and you put yourself somewhere else on the timeline.
And can I say what you just spoke about, that grace of being able to notice it and move with it and shift in the moment. So like yourself, for those of us who've been aware of this kind of energy play and these kind of ideas for longer than, say, just this year, now that it's happening, we're playing with it very differently than people who this is the first time they're seeing this stuff. And for them, it's like a slap in the face. So I think it's great, like people, like for you to be able to hold it with so much grace and flow, you're expanding that reality that other people can then step into it that way. Because a lot of what's out there, people are like hitting the wall and like crumbling into pieces instead of seeing the bigger picture and how playful they can be about it and how much permission they can give themselves to, it's okay, change, flow,
I just had this image of, well, there's different types of people, right? There's those of us who are, relieved to find out that things aren't what they seem, because we knew that something was too fucked up to be, okay. And now it's like, oh, it's not okay. Thank God, because I thought I was supposed to be okay with something that is really not okay, and I just can't. So, there's a burst of relief that comes from people like that, learning the truth, where it gives a huge positive boost in the right direction, right? It's like awareness creates, ability to change, right? So it's like becoming aware is like, oh, this is good. We need people to know. Then there are other people, and I don't think these people are really meant to have the full experience of revelation and relief. Right. So I feel like there are some people who are going to be like, oh, I can't take it anymore. It's just, and they just go down the tunnel of darkness, which, not all of us are on our way back to unity. Some of us are on our way to experience hell. They haven't done it yet. They don't know what it's like. So they want to create a new experience, which we should embrace and love.
Exactly. You got to, early on, like when this first started, and so I remember like in March, I started posting stuff, and I sort of got a little bit braver within myself about what I was posting and sharing. And I had so many friends private message me on Facebook and say, I totally agree with you, but I can't say this. What if I don't have the, they were just feeling so paralyzed within themselves to actually do anything. And I'm like, you don't have to speak up. If you're not inspired to speak up, it's not your time to speak up. Don't make yourself feel crappy about it. So I think there is, as you said, there are those of us who are excited. Like every time a layer comes down, even though on the 3D side, I'm still impacted by how much this has fucked up people's lives. You're talking about the kids who are going to need mental health assistance for the next 2 decades to overcome the mayhem and the distrust that it's created in communities, and the whole idea that you should dob in your neighbors, and the elderly dying alone in nursing homes, that ridiculousness. It's going to take us years as our human experience to overcome that. But from a 5D, from an energy perspective, every time one of these walls come back, like, fuck yeah. That's so exciting. There's another layer of it gone. There's another layer of it gone.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, there's other people who are fighting tooth and nail not to see.
Yeah.
And you got to let them be there. That's their choice. Even if their sole purpose for this lifetime was to see, they are making that human free will choice not to see. And it's not my place to drag them into the light,
Right.
kicking and screaming. What's that about, right?
Right.
So there's lots of people who are on the verge. They're kind of open. And those are the ones that we talk to. And, you know, I just think, who in the world ever changed their mind by being called an idiot?
Right.
You know, that's not how you present information. You know, if you can, you know, connect from that human love and compassion to someone else's love and compassion, and just go, we may have different ideas, but if we're connecting from there, at least we can have a conversation. And if the conversation opens the avenue for something, great. And if it doesn't, I would still rather disagree with you and leave you in love and compassion than try and belittle you into, like, shame you to try and change your mind, because that's not the way to love and compassion for me.
You know what I think I'm noticing just in the last few days is that the unity consciousness is more readily available for people. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like people who haven't been even aware of such a thing are now starting to see themselves. Like, there's an inner knowing, an inner wisdom that's kind of becoming more available for people, which on the other side of that is, you know, if you have so much trauma and pain in your heart that you can't have an open heart because of lack of trust, fear of judgment, you know, anger and whatever, that's it's more difficult for people who have those traumas to open their heart and see themselves in the unity consciousness and see the oneness, you know, because then what happens is this anger and this stuff comes up and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to deal with it. And you move through it. But there are people who are like, no, I can't accept this reality. I can't accept my trauma and my pain. I don't want to see it. And I'm going to keep fighting it, you know. And just thinking about that and the way that it comes to me is those people that are fighting the hardest and who are giving you the most reason to be angry and attack them are the ones that need the most compassion and, you know, understanding, because they're it's their own demons that they're fighting.
That's it. That's perfectly said. And one thing that I've always tried to teach my kids is, you can disagree with someone, and even as you move to stop their behavior, you can still be giving them love. You don't have to hate the person to disagree with them.
Right.
You know, you can say, it's like a mosquito. A mosquito is not out to ruin your life. You're not going to stand there and like let 1,000 of them eat you alive. Yeah. They are not out. You don't have to make the mosquito the bad guy.
Right. It's not personal.
Yeah, it's not personal. And I think we do make it personal, because when somebody disagrees with us, because it's hard for most people to hold the possibility of two realities, or more than two realities, multiple realities. To just go, you know, in your worldview, in your human experience, this is your truth. In mine, this is my truth. And to actually look and see where can they interact, rather than you convincing me and me convincing you. Where is the middle? Where's there's got to be some point of content, you know, of agreement in there if we look for it.
It does exist. You just have to be open enough to find it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, did you have an awakening experience you can share with us, some kind of catalyst?
It was like an awakening decade.
Yeah. Anything you want to share?
Sure. So like, I've been interested in doing personal development and spiritual growth stuff since my early 20s. Really amazing stuff. But I think I actually, in hindsight, got that a lot of it was very kind of playing around the edges of stuff for me, because I was not really willing to see past my own facade. And when I was pregnant with my first child, I thought, oh, I'm going to have like 2-3 months off, then I'm going to go back and follow my career and da-da-da-da. She popped out and I decided, no, I'm staying home. I'm raising her. And I was really blessed that my husband was of the same opinion. So I I've worked since I was 14. I have an incredibly strong work ethic. But suddenly I was a nobody at home looking after a child. And then 3 years later, I had my other child in a society that doesn't value the family unit, that, oh, you're just the stay-at-home mom. And look, a lot of that was also, I realized I put on myself, because so much of how I felt about myself was about other people's accolades to me. How much money I made, the title I had, how much I helped other people, what I did for other people. So then when all of that got taken away and I wasn't being fed from the outside, and I realized I had no inside, there was nothing there. It was pure facade. So that crumbled.
Yeah.
Now, in hindsight, I've been told that's called high functioning depression.
Yeah.
Because to most people, they had no idea what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still lived life, I still did stuff, I still smiled, but on the inside, it was kind of like, you know, the vacuum that makes the can crumple eventually. And then it got to the point where
you're reading my own story, so I'm like, yep, I know all this. Yeah,
that's it. So that's kind of where it all unraveled. And I danced in that murkiness, that darkness for quite a while. One, because I had no language. That's not what I thought depression was, right? And and the thing I used to say to myself is, you've lived such a blessed life. Why are you so fucked up? What's wrong with you? Get over it. And you know, and so much of the new age stuff that was around me was positive your way out of this. Think your positive, think your way out of this. Affirm your way out of this.
Right.
Like that bypassing shit. Seriously, that's one of my triggers is when I see people bypassing, like,
Same.
So, and that's one of the things I do a lot in my work is a lot of people come with this idea of this is how I'm going to solve it. And I'm like, no, we're going to go to the core. We're going to see what it is you've been bypassing all these years that's made you create all those facades. So I suppose the awakening experience was a whole bunch of little experiences in those, you know, for a couple of years, I just sat in the murk because I had nothing to define it other than was not me.
Yeah.
And then slowly one experience showed me a little bit of myself and another experience showed me another. So eventually, and I'd say that the more spiritually aligned I was with myself, the more able I was to deal with the depression and anxiety. So now I can say that I don't have depression and anxiety. I can sometimes feel it slipping in, and then I know what I need to do to look after myself. But I would, you know, I say I had depression and anxiety, and I still live with depression and anxiety, but I don't have it. That the way I define it for myself.
What you mean? I'm fully on board with that package. You know, it takes
a similar experience for you.
Very, very similar. Yeah. I mean, I had to come from mental illness. Like I thought I was crazy. You know, I was depressed from age 4. And now in retrospect, you know, that's like, I understand my body pain. I've been in pain, physical pain since age 4, particularly in my knees. And now understanding how energy works, you know, this is the same stuff. And it's like you're talking about the awakening, it comes in little bits, right? It's like, it can last a really long time. And I think the most self-loving thing we can do is to be patient with ourselves and just surrender. It's like, okay, I'm awakening, because at some point you realize, wait, I've been remembering really most of this time, you know, like, it's like, yeah, there's an awakening, but I think the remembering is what takes the longest time. It's like, you have to remember yourself, remember, there's something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch on, but anyway, you know, it's like being depressed in this world is like, because this world is so sick and twisted, there's no way not to be depressed, because we have a knowing of things being better, you know, there's a better way to do things. And, you know, I just feel like it's getting, you know, we could describe it as faster or stronger, or the energy is shifting. It's like, yeah, but it never stops. It just keeps going, you know, like we weren't where we were. We weren't ready for where we are now 5 years ago.
Yeah. That's it.
It's like you can't like come on butterfly, get the fuck out, it's like, what's taking you so long? It's birth, man. It's birth. You don't just pop it out. It's comes. And you're relaxing through it, like, helps.
Yeah, look, and I think two of the things that just came to mind when you were talking about that, as a culture, we're so fixated on the end result, as if, happiness, you achieve it one day and that's done. Or self-actualization, you achieve it and that's the finish line, right? We keep trying to get to this thing instead of understanding that the journey, it's not like you go from being broken to being whole in, one step. What every part you do it's a joy, it's a discovery, it's a mind fuck, it's everything. Every step of it is.
Every
right?
bit of it.
Yeah. But I think we're also, as a culture, we're so addicted to the hustle. We're so addicted to the push. Like one of the things I work with my clients is recognizing, and I have a easily triggered nervous system. I now recognize that with myself. No amount of I'm going to push ahead and bang my head into the wall is going to get me to where I need to go. And the thing is, what triggers each person is different. So what I've become good at noticing for myself, and what I help my clients do, is we have our comfort zone. Obviously, it's the stuff we know and it's easy. Then we have the growth zone, which is the discomfort that you can lean into, but there's something that still feels inspiring and challenging, but inspiring, right? And then there's the paralysis zone. That's where, you get so triggered because your nervous system has gone into fight, flight, survival mode. You can't grow there, right?
Right.
And so much of how we approach so much of life, you assume you have to go from this straight to this.
Right.
So you're going from stop, start, and going, I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this when everybody else does it? Because we've been pushed to keep operating at this point when we're constantly broken. Like you can't even catch your breath enough. That's what I described it to my husband when I was deep in my depression. I said, I feel like I'm treading water. I can't even get my head up to catch my breath, much less think about how the hell I saved myself. And because I was constantly operating in that space of paralyzed, couldn't think beyond just how to keep the next day. And that's not the place you're going to create any kind of magic.
No.
So
yeah, what's going through my head when you're talking is our culture, like you said. We feel like, okay, I have these three choices. Which choice is going to get me where I want to go? Which choice is going to get me to where I want to be the fastest? Which one is going to propel me to my destination so that I'm done and I can do the next one? It's like, I don't know, is it the way we've been conditioned, our attention span, like to have segments of entertainment so that we don't realize that life is made up of all these little choices. So you can't choose wrong. You just choose one and then, go with it. We're so, like you said earlier, addicted to the outcome.
Well, you made a good point there, was about being, right or wrong. And our schooling system doesn't encourage us to take risks, because if you're wrong, you're made to look stupid. You fail a test. I started homeschooling my 13-year-old a couple of months ago, and she picked a project that she wanted to create something in Minecraft, and she had found some reference photos, so she'd started doing it, and then she realized that some of the reference photos didn't match up with the other reference photos, and she was getting really frustrated because she had to undo things and stuff. And I said, what you're doing there is much more important than having got it right the first go. Because what you're learning is how to recognize contradicting information. And how do you then think your way out of that? And I said, you reflecting on that process from a learning perspective means a lot more than the end result. The end result is great, looks pretty, whatever.
Right.
But that process, and we don't respect the process enough, because it's so much about, and even like, I was 15 when I left the US. So I'm not sure if their education things are still the same, but in Australia, we have all these, tests that measure kids against other kids. And, they have that one snapshot. So it's so specific, to being able to test well and do that well. rather than looking across months of someone's journey. And what did you learn? Like if you started here and you're here, is that not better than, being from here to here? Because the growth is more. Like we should be looking for growth rather than one easily identifying marker. And
also,
our education system, we know, needs a big kick in the bum anyway.
Let's give people credit for competing against robots.
Yes.
I mean, what do we expect? We're not freaking robots. We've been, funneled into this mentality of institutionalized thinking that makes you think, oh, I'm, didn't Albert Einstein way back when say, if you tell a fish, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree,
Yes.
I mean, it's becoming a little more obvious. I think common sense is going to tell us that we're not meant to be this way.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So let me ask you more questions. When did you realize you were intuitive?
Officially, about 4 years ago when I started actively using it in my work. Before that, I think my sense of not good enoughness meant I wouldn't admit to myself when I was being intuitive or bringing, through psychic visions or something. But also I do have a flair for the dramatic. So if it doesn't show up with a whole lot of fanfare, I kind of don't notice what it is. So I'd say 4 years ago when I started my business and actively bringing in through visions for when I relate to clients, or using my intuition when I'm talking to them and picking up their patterns and so on. Yeah, so officially 4 years, but in hindsight, again, I can see how a lot of things that I was seeing or doing was the information coming in, which I can now acknowledge is not mine, as in, this 3D life. So it came from this soul self.
Yeah, I think when people realize that they have these abilities, it's like when you start to realize you've always had these abilities, how differently you reflect on things that took place in your past, knowing that, you had this the whole time and it kicks in, So did realizing that you have them in the last 4 years change your life?
Yes. One, because I then allow it to become a natural part of my business. But even then, it's taken layers. So my background is in marketing and design. So when I first started my coaching business, I remember I did my first set of business cards. And in the 3 weeks that they took to arrive, I looked at them and I had, as a safety thing, listed that I would do editing, writing, and graphic design. Because those are what I'm known for. That's my buffer, right? And 3 weeks, I looked at it and went, that's so full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this, right? Because I just kept going, I have to play the safe card. I can't put myself out and tell people I do intuitive work, whatever. So, and again, like it's only been since I revamped my business in February of all times, at the beginning of everything, that I really started owning the fact that I work intuitively, that's a key part of how we do it and stuff like that. So it's kind of brought in layers. And every time I give myself permission to become more visible in what I do, the alignment with my clients is stronger. How I approach my business is just more fun. I love what I do. But also from like a parenting point of view, it gives me a lot more immediate access to a broader, source of information, and how I relate to people and recognizing my stories and patterns. Everything happens a lot smoother, a lot quicker, a lot less snagged. So definitely, the more I embrace it, the easier my life gets. The easier my life gets, the more I embrace it. So it's a beautiful kind of feedback loop on itself, which is, it took me quite a while to trust it, because I realized that one of my blocks with myself, especially when the whole shell of the depression happened, and a lot of the new age stuff is, saying affirmations about, I love myself. And I got one day that I actually already love myself. I don't trust myself. So once I started trusting myself and finding ways to prove my trust to myself so I can trust myself with the bigger things and the bigger things and the bigger things, then the more I let the intuition come in as well.
Yeah.
Because allowing my intuition in wasn't about lack of self-love, it was about lack of self-trust.
You know, when you mentioned the new age thing, you're the second person that I talked to that mentions it as a thing, right? The new age thing. And not that you actually did it, but that's how I perceive it when it's being discussed in that manner. I perceive it as a thing, like there's this new age thing. And I'm really not too familiar with it because I really don't know. I mean, I know that there's been some harmful, practices or whatever that has come out of this. But anytime you put anything into the status or category of being a thing, then the thing itself becomes a thing, which is positive and negative, right? But what really is happening, this new age moving forward into a more inner wisdom based way of being, it's like it's in here, it's not out there, it's not in my crystals, it's not in my books, it's not in my tools or my wands or my little 3D material things that give me a certain feeling. It's in me. I use these tools to bring out something that's already in me.
Yeah.
It's like it's all in there. I just, because I'm in a physical material body, I have to go through this process of figuring out how to get it out of there. So when you're talking, you speak like a master, right? And what does that mean? It doesn't mean, oh, you're so much, we need to bow. We're all at some level of mastery, all of us on this planet. And when you realize it's like, I know this, I remember this, the remembering and the integrating. It's like, I've played this game before. I remember this. Ooh, there's something here, when you start to rekindle that and live from that place of mastery, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. No, you said it perfectly. Every time you make a thing, that's beautiful. You make, there's negative and positive. And I think the positive thing of the new age movement was because people who weren't yet ready or willing to see the divinity in themselves, they were accessing this portal through crystals and oracle cards and whatever. And some of those people eventually realized that those are tools and maybe they're fun, so I'll keep using them, but I don't give my power to them.
Right.
And the downside would be, because there was such a high level of bypassing, it kind of cemented a lot of trauma.
Yes.
But there was, and again, I think, I haven't kind of looked into it enough to know why the bypassing was such a strong thing, as far as the component of affirmations and goal setting and, putting your attention onto only positive things. I still have people who do very high-end energy work, if you want to call it that, and that they've been experienced, they work with thousands of people who, for them, there is no energy except love and light. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine in the universe you live in. But personally, I've experienced the other side to love and light. And for me, it's always a choice. There isn't, like, to me, saying that there's only love and light is like the idea that, in the old fashioned idea that man was the center of the world and we get to use everything to our use without consequence. And then we start recognizing that animals have given rights, that the nature, the elements, we're all a thing that flows together. It's not like this, man is the center and everything else is there to serve you and no consciousness for itself. So when people talk about only love and light, it's like, well, there's this whole other side. You might not choose to work with it actively, but to even not recognize that it's there, to me, that creates a huge, I don't know, like an abyss that they're going to end up falling into because I can't see, oh shit, I'm in it. So that, I think that concerns me personally when there are people who are preaching only love and light, because then a lot of people, when they hit that darkness, they're extra lost because everything that they have felt connected to in the spiritual world is only about love and light. They don't know what this other thing was. And I think that was part of what not only did I not have the vocabulary of depression around it, I had no understanding that there was this other thing other than love and light. So I'm thinking I'm broken. There's this other, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Rather than, well, these are both energies at play. And there's things that you do that strengthen one and things that you do that strengthen the other.
Yeah. You can't be all 100% love and light until you've experienced the dark 100% as well.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, once it's a choice, then it's a choice.
Yeah.
But if it's an addiction or a tool that you use to avoid seeing what's real, then that's harmful. That's just piling,
Yeah.
like you said, it's accumulating karmic debt or guilt or both, whereas you're going to have to get that back somewhere.
Yeah.
All that pushing away you're doing.
Yeah, like you said, the addiction. I think the addiction is the biggest thing to recognize, as if I'm pushing one particular angle, then I'm not willing to look at something else. I actually had the opposite thing, where very early on in my interest in spirituality, I'm very attracted to the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Like the shadow world is where I'm very comfortable.
Me too.
But it took me a long time, and mostly through my depression, to recognize that my personal shadow world, where there's a lot of magic and power for me, is very different to the denser energies, which, we can talk about demonic energies or just dense energies, whatever you want to call it. But because there's so little conversation about that, most of us don't recognize when we're flipping between one and two. Yeah. And especially when you're in your depression, when your energy is already so muddy that you can't feel what is yours. Mm-hmm. And I see that a lot with people who are going through mental health struggles. And for me, a lot of my youth, when I was naturally attracted to the darker things, anything light and fluffy, I was like, fuck off. I don't want those fluffy, boring stuff. Yeah. Because I attributed the excitement and the adventure to the dark.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, the addiction to the dark, what I had to recognize was there's a whole other power on the light. Mm-hmm. So as you said, when people who are only stuck in believing in the light, there's a whole other side that they need to discover for themselves, if only to then consciously choose where they are, rather than being pigeonholed because they don't even understand that there's something else.
The richness is in the dark. It really is. Yeah, and it's funny, it's not personal. It's just, wow, it's that having had the experience of, love and light is great, but boy, it's so much more vivid and depth. There's so much more depth to it when you understand how the dark plays in. Because the dark is always there.
It also took me a while to recognize that I can talk about, and I just did right then. I talk about light and fluffy in a very dismissive, fluffy shit kind of way, right? But when I connect to the real power of the light, it's more along the lines of Archangel Michael. Mm-hmm. We're talking, he's a warrior. Yeah. He's an activist. We're not talking about, burning incense and positive thinking our way out of World War III. And I think that's where a lot of the love and light has kind of become like too extreme in separating it from real life. Like now that I feel a lot more balanced as a person, when I'm in my activist, when I'm in my rage, I'm going to create change in the world kind of thing, I bring in the light as much as my dark, but from both, there's something to gain. And I have to kind of separate my own shadow from the denser dark, the same way I have to separate my warrior light from the light and fluffy shit kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think both sides have got these extremes that have nothing to do with how personally I as a human want to live. Mm-hmm. But I have to understand the spectrum that I can pick from. So I pick what's, aligned is with me, which would be different for everybody,
Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't know what your choices are, then you're just unconscious.
Yes. Articulated beautifully. I love it. You just can put it all into one sentence.
I've spent my life repeating myself to people who are listening. So I have developed this way of speaking.
People are listening to you now, sweetheart.
That's really great. That's very healing for me. So let me ask you again. Okay, so this is not an again question. See, I want to mix in some, I do have some inspirational questions on the original. So maybe you could tell me what inspires you.
What inspires me? Okay. So I'm going to be like a really typical mom and say my kids, because they're just freaking awesome. I tell them how freaking awesome they are on a regular basis. They're both amazing. They're so much my teachers and my guides. They're very yin and yang themselves. So it's always interesting to see how their energies play out there. So within my private life,
you have one of each.
They're one of each. I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. Mm-hmm. And just recognizing my own triggers when things play out between them and using that as an opportunity to heal. And I think my main thing that kept me going during my depression was I wanted to be there for my kids. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be there for my kids. I want to be whole to raise these kids. I want to be around to watch them grow up, right? So on a very intimate, personal note, it is my kids. Mm-hmm. And I love having them in my life, and I love school holidays when we're more enmeshed in each other. But, I just watching them, like sometimes I kind of step back and watch them as people who are not connected to me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited about the world. I'm meeting so many young people who are just amazing. And, and I put my kids into that group. And on a business for the work I do, when I'm sitting with a client and I'm reflecting some of their patterns, and they might say something, but their energy is telling me something else, and I bring that to attention, some people's ability to take that in, they are really in their space ready to transform. And watching people do that in the moment, it's just, I sit there, I sometimes cry during sessions, I get goosebumps, I go and journal for hours because I'm so inspired about humanity and what people can achieve for themselves when they're showing up for themselves. And I say to them, I'm not giving any answers. I have no answers. I only hold the space and I ask questions. Whatever they do or don't do is on them, because this is their journey. So when certain people step into it and they become, you just see their energy expand, and you see them feel their hearts truly for the first time. And, grown men get teary because they've connected to that little vulnerability, and soft women finally kind of broaden their shoulders because they know that they can have the power they need. When people do this, I just sit there and go, I love my life. I love that I get to do this with people. So I actually believe humanity left to its own devices is fucking awesome. Yeah. And that's what inspires me. I see people stepping into their awesomeness. Yeah. So despite all the crap going on right now, I personally keep seeing, and maybe because I'm looking, so I'm noticing examples of people just being awesome. Mm. And that inspires me to keep doing more to support people being awesome.
I'm grateful that you're doing that. I'm really grateful that you decided to have this conversation with me, because I feel like, to me, what inspiration is, it's what do you do when you're all alone? You don't care what anybody thinks. It's what do you do when you're not worried about the outcome? You don't care whether, anybody else will support you or not. It's coming out of you. It's not because of anything that you've seen someone else do, unless it's already in you. Do you know what I mean? Like when we're doing these conversations, it's like, yeah, we may get all kinds of different people, but when they see that you're bringing out of you what's in you, then I want people to see, I have something in me too. I want to bring out what's in me. That's, to me, that's inspiration. It's like, and we inspire each other in that way by doing, this is what makes me happy. I'm going to do it, whether there's anything good comes out of it or not. It's making me happy. I'm inspired. And other people look and they say, I can do something like that too. Or, I have it in me already. Let me go get mine. you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I've been listening to quite a few of the interviews you've done, and I love how people are sharing, and it's like having these beautiful, deep, and meaningful conversations. I'm
Yeah.
not a person that can talk about the weather,
Yeah, me
you
neither.
know, but this kind of stuff I love. This is what I call juicy conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's the spark of life, is learning about what's in people's inner worlds and how they show that to the world.
Yeah. And we may not resonate with every single topic or personality or energy. And, I thought about it, it's like, am I going to, censor what the universe is bringing to me? It's like I'm being gifted all these different energies, and am I going to pick through them and choose the ones that I want the world to have, or am I going to let the world have it all and let the world choose? What do you want to align with? It's like I have my vision of what I want 5D to look like, and I want people that fit into my 5D that have their own visions.
Yep. You're being the anti-censorship media. I love it.
Here we are. This is us. This is real. We don't edit. We don't script it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that looks unprofessional. Really? Great, because we're not professionals.
This is awesome. This is true conversation.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to hear it.
Yeah.
And speaking of conversation, who comes to you? Who is your client base? Who are your people?
My people. The main prerequisite of people that I work with is they already have to, within themselves, know that having values and doing personal development work is part of an empowered life. Like, I will not spend time convincing people that they should have values. And I will not convince people that they should undertake personal development. So like for some people, I work from a business angle. For some people, I work for like a life angle. But you know what? We're all the same person. You show up. Wherever you go, there you are, right? So people come to me and go, oh, my marketing message isn't clear, but blah, blah, blah. What happens is they don't have a sense of themselves. Or they come and say, I've got these 3 ideas and I don't know which one to decide with. Blah, blah, blah. And it comes out, they don't have a sense of themselves. So a lot of it is really going back to the core of what person is. So mostly it's people who are excited about doing the inner work so that their outer world can flow. And, I was talking to someone yesterday. I said, I am not a fortune teller. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen. I'm not an advice giver. I'm not going to say, you must do this, you must do this. I'm going to hold the portal. I'm going to hold the space. You are going to do the work of the inner work, because that's where everything is. And long after your work is done with me and another key decision comes in, I want you to have the skills within yourself. Because, in such a guru-infested society,
right,
we just turn to the other person, tell me what I should do. Oh, this fortune teller said I should do this. And I've got no problem with people who can see the future and share that wisdom. But I know people who are so out of alignment with trusting themselves that they cannot make any key decisions without seeking that first, right?
absolutely.
But that thing is, we're constantly giving our power away. What happens when something isn't aligned to you? And also the other thing I work with a lot of people is honing their sense of discernment. So in any kind of personal development or business development, we have so much information out there. But once you truly know what's right for you, what's aligned for you, what fits in with your purpose, your values, then you can look at any information and go, that works for me, is aligned to me, and that isn't. So instead of feeling like we have to find the one guru who's going to give us all the information and we don't have to really think for ourselves, we look for guides. We look for bits of information, and then we trust ourselves to weave that tapestry that makes sense for us.
Yes.
So as far as the people I work with, a lot of them are in their own small or medium business, and they've kind of knocked around enough to recognize that they're part of the problem.
Yeah.
So that they can start embracing being part of their solution.
Yeah.
Or people who are having, those life decisions. I don't know if I should do this or if I should do that, or I'm looking at a bunch of stuff. Or, the big one is I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
I'm burning out.
Yeah.
That's in a lot of languaging,
Yes.
because so much of us are starting to recognize that we can't be running on empty all the time.
Yeah. How do you help someone who doesn't see any other way of being?
Yep.
And on
I
that
have had
note,
to let go of clients
yeah.
who are not ready to see. Look, I do think one of the things that's really important is we often mistake venting to our friends to doing inner work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also think that most of us have a huge lack of being witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I've spoken to prospective clients, I've said that before you work with me, I really suggest you go to a really good therapist.
Yeah.
You need someone to just sit there and hold the container while you tell the story until your story is done. Because until you've exhausted that story and you feel somebody else can see you in that story without judgment, you're not willing to let go of it as an excuse for everything else that you've done since then. Right? So like, I'm not a therapist and I'm not an energy healer. I have great friends who are, so I sometimes say to my clients, I think you would benefit from that. I can work with you on, seeing your stories and looking past it. But I kind of come in after you've started to release the story, right? Because I think it needs somebody really present, a counselor or a therapist who can do that for us to feel witnessed.
Yeah.
And being witnessed is really, really a strong healing thing in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric was my witness. And until I met him, I was headed down a dark path. Just getting the witness, just getting the validation, just that's all I needed. I was ready to go. I just, it was just like, I just needed someone to confirm that what I was experiencing was really happening to me. And once I got that confirmation, I was out of there.
Yeah.
And
well, from what you're saying, the fact that you were ready to transform it that quickly, I'd say you've already done a lot of the work. And that was kind of like the final, bringing together.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people I work with, the ones who I continue working with are like that. So I'll hold it and we'll bring together a lot of pieces so they finally can see the entirety of it. And that being witnessed is really powerful.
Yeah.
But the people that I do suggest that they go specifically to a counselor or a therapist or a kinesiologist, somebody who can really help them access and release that, are the ones who are so still buried in their space of, but they did this to me and it's never been my fault. They can't even fathom another way of seeing. So I think it's beautiful that you have Eric to witness.
Me too. It's definitely pre-planned. There was no accident. The way that it happened, there's no way that was just coincidence.
Love it.
Too close to the edge. So let me ask you another question about what's going on in this world. Do you have an intuitive direction you think we're headed?
So I'm very excited. I'm very happy. I can say, look, we're really blessed that my little family of 4 and my parents, we've been minimally impacted. I do really feel, as the human side of me, the empath side of me, I really feel it for the people who are doing it tough. We talked about the damage this is doing to kids, the isolation for people, domestic abuse, suicide, the elderly dying alone in nursing homes, like that stuff just guts me. So on a 3D level, even though I'm really blessed about it, I'm very outspoken about everything else because I'm not the only one here. Just because I've got it good doesn't mean I pretend not to see what else is going on. So from a human perspective, the ongoing, and the fact that this has been going on for 10 months, 9 months now, and all of our nervous systems are on this constant state of, on the edge of fight or flight. This is exhausting. On so many levels, we're all being drained, right? So I think on the human level, staying very connected to your love source, to whatever brings you those little bits of joy in every day. That's really important, because we have to ride this out. You know, I'm in Sydney, but the stuff going on in Melbourne is insane. You know, and then whenever they talk about things being mandated, and that becomes our dinner time conversation, and I can see my kids starting to go into that place. It's like, okay, how do I manage their fear without lying to them?
Mm-hmm.
And so they understand what is age appropriate about what might be happening. But at the same time, on a 5D level, on the energy vibrational level, I am so fucking excited, because I've never experienced so many people questioning so much. You know, our parenting choices, our medical intervention choices for the past 10, 13 years has been outside of the norm. So we're kind of used to being called the other, but you know, it was always such a minority. But now there's so many people asking questions from the government, from the pharmaceuticals, from social media and the popular media, and this can't be unseen. This is not going to be unknown. Whatever comes out of this in the next month, in the next 2 years, this isn't going to die off. People who have seen and felt are not going to go back to not seeing and feeling.
Right.
So that in its own is going to shift things. And I do personally believe that we are in the higher time zone. We're just catching up to the mundane reality of it. So I think it's exciting. I think what's happening is going to be beautiful. It's going to take a little bit of human dense time for it to kind of come together. What most of us energetically already feel has shifted. So, you know, for me, it's a balance between how to stay connected to my 5D excitement, as well as my 3D real concerns, so that I'm not bypassing or minimizing either. But I do think this is amazing. Nothing in history has ever felt like this, not purely for what's happening, but for how transparently it's happening. You know, we've had wars before, but we haven't had people on 100 phones recording it from different avenues, and all these people on, you know, their independent websites sharing their truth, because, you know, YouTube took down their channel, so now they have their own website and they're still speaking their truth, right? So for us to have so many avenues of conflicting information, as stressful as that can feel, it's also empowering, because like you were saying, instead of creating one narrative that everybody has to agree with, presenting all this information and supporting people to actually look into things for themselves. That is just pure excitement to me.
Absolutely agree. Let me ask you, like, we're going to do this, man. I'm optimistic. I'll just tell you, I get downloads almost every day, as many people do. And the things that I've tapped into recently are really great. And the world is headed into heaven on earth, just like many of us came here hoping for. You know, we hoped that we could bring this 5D heaven on earth. You know, everybody's got what they needed. Everybody's happy. Everybody's free. I think it's coming. I think we made it. I think we did it. We made Earth great again. It was always great, but we took it back from those that were trying to, you know, turn it into something that we weren't really preferring.
Yes. Have you seen the kids' movie Ants?
You know, I am aware of that movie, but I don't think I've actually watched it myself.
So this is the time that ants are coming together and standing up to the grasshoppers.
I do remember that part. See, that was my old batch. my old life. But so one last question for people who are having a hard time with their awakening and remembering right now. What advice do you have for them?
Look, there's so many topics that can be your path to an awakening. And the awakening, for one thing, I think it's really important to not see it as a position of superiority over someone else, but it's your awakening to your own inner truth, what feels real to you, rather than all the stuff we've been told and conditioned to believe. So I think there's so many topics. There's government, there's media, there's pharmaceuticals, there's healthy foods, there's environment. There's so many ways into that rabbit hole, if you want to call it. And I have friends who live so far down the rabbit hole. I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But I think, you look into it from the topic that touches you, because that's where your energy is going to be the most useful. And that's where you're going to be most open-minded to see things that might contradict what you thought before, but you'd be more open to it, right? And to always, we talked about the comfort, the growth, the discomfort, but then the paralysis. Don't push yourself into the paralysis. I've had people, my friends who private message me and go, oh my God, I just read this and I'm so shit scared and I don't know what to do. I'm like, go back to yourself. Focus on you and your family. So, we've got individual responsibility, family, community, country, global. You activate, you stand up, you speak up at the level that you feel safe and inspired to do so. Because going, well, I can't change the world, so I'm not going to do anything. That's the worst game to buy into. Because even if you do nothing else, focusing on your own self, your energy, how you relate into the world, how you put out what the love, the compassion, the kindness, the understanding you put out into the world, that is the single most powerful thing you can do anyway, right? So for each person coming into their awakening is be open-minded. Don't be fixed on finding one right answer, because that's the guru worship that we're getting rid of anyway. No one person is going to have all of the right answers for you. Be open, read widely, think widely. Don't get stuck into having to know everything about everything, because that in itself can you'll lose months down that hole. But just trust yourself and go with what feels right. And if you feel a little bit scared about it or a little bit worried about it, connect to a friend, talk it out. Don't just stay in your fear and, put yourself into a festa.
Yeah. No guilt, no shame.
That's right.
No fear.
No guilt, no shame, no fear. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Tell us where to get access to your content. If we want to reach out to you, how do we get a hold of you?
Okay, so my business name is Artemiss K, and I have a website, artemissk.com. Now, Artemiss with a double S. Mm-hmm. Artemis, the goddess, has one. I have two because I'm super Artemis, right? Super goddess. That's how I'll explain it. So Artemiss with a double SK.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And I've got a YouTube channel. So it's all under Artemiss K.
We're going to put all those links in the box below, and hopefully we'll end up on your channel.
I'd love to put you on my channel. Maybe I'll interview you.
That would be fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm a totally different person when I talk about myself. Like, seriously.
No, love it. Oh, well, okay, we're going to do it then. We're going to do it.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I want to thank you for joining me. Thanks for making the time to do this.
Thank you. And one of the best things that's come out of this craziness is connecting to people like you. We connected purely on energy.
Yeah.
And there's a dozen people who I've connected with energetically, you definitely included, who I go, oh my gosh, my world is so much richer.
Yeah.
Because of what's happened, and these people have come into my life. So thank you for being you, and thank you for connecting, and thank you for inviting me to do this.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.